All right, so we good to kick off? Jack, Mark, what do you guys think?
Ready to go. 12:15 p.m.
All right,
Good to go.
let's do it. All right, so everybody on the call, as you've heard, it's 12:18. We're going to start the meeting. It is being recorded so that folks who might have had technical issues accessing this can view it and provide feedback at a later time. So this meeting of the Central Plymouth County Water Commission is called to order. I'm Joanne Zigmund, the chair of the commission. Pursuant to Governor Baker's order suspending certain provisions of open meeting law and the governor's order imposing strict limitations on the number of people who can gather, this meeting's being conducted via remote participation. Every effort's being made to ensure the public can adequately access proceedings in real time. Questions and comments from the public will be welcomed throughout the meeting at the appropriate points. The votes will be done by roll call to ensure count accuracy. And I will now just do a quorum call. So Joanne Zigmund here, Jack O'Leary.
Here.
Mark Sotier.
Here.
All right, so we have our three commissioners here and we do have a quorum. We have quite a lot to cover on the agenda today. So I think we're going to start with approval of minutes. Mark and Jack, did you guys have a chance to review the minutes from June 9th as well as June 29th?
Yes.
Yes, no exceptions.
Yeah, I have no changes to them.
Okay, do I have a motion?
Motion to approve the minutes for June 9th, and I'm sorry, the other date is June
29.
29th. Thank you.
And a second?
Second.
All in favor? Joanne, aye. Jack?
In favor?
Mark?
Aye.
All right, so the motion passes. On to finance report and invoice approval. Frank, are you ready?
I am. Thank you, Chair. I sent out a finance report to the commissioners, which basically just shows interest earned for June, interest earned for May, and there was the one invoice that was approved for Kimberly Groff Associates for $4,950. The balance as of June 30th of 2021 is $481,260.44. If there's any questions on that, I can answer that. We just had that one invoice, so it's pretty straightforward. Seeing no questions, hearing no questions. I do have two invoices for the commissioners that I forwarded out with backup. The first invoice is for Kimberly Groff Consulting. This is for services provided up through June 30th, predominantly geared towards the RFP. Total amount due is $2,625. A second invoice is for services and expenses paid for by Central Plymouth County and provided by Central Plymouth County for Central Plymouth County Water District, excuse me, by the Plymouth County team, myself and Nancy, along with IT and other associated invoices, other associated costs. The breakdown of the invoice for the record is annual service fee of $1,500, which includes all postings and email submittals and general mailing and administrative duties. That's $1,500. The email for the CPC WDC includes a general email at waterdistrict.plymouthcountyma.gov, and then one for each of the commissioners. We also have backup services for each of the emails. So those the general email cost is $70.80 each. We have the expanded license for Commissioner O'Leary at $202.32, and then backup services for the year at $180. We have business cards. We printed business cards for the commissioners at a total of $30. We had Gatehouse Media invoice for the RFP, which totaled $149.94. And then we had the county services, which include all the minute attendance, meeting attendance, minute documentation, and then all special services like crafting of the RFP. So you all got the details of all this, and all the details on this invoice will be attached with the minutes as per requirement for open meeting law. The total of the invoice for Plymouth County is $4,730.08. And I'd need a motion for each individually if so be the way of the will of the commissioners.
Do I have a motion?
So move.
Motion.
Second.
Okay.
Mark?
All in favor? Joanne, aye.
Jack, aye.
Mark, aye.
So if that's for the Plymouth County invoice, then I just need the Kim Groth invoice also, please. Motion.
Do I have a motion
So
Motion.
moved.
and a second?
Second.
All right, all in favor? Joanne, aye.
Jack, aye.
Mark, aye.
All right.
Great, thank
Thank
you.
you, everyone.
Thank you very much. And that's it for the finance report, Chair.
Super. And now on to Kimberly Groff Consulting, a scope of service for helping us with the project implementation now that it's going forward. Jack and Mark, did you guys have a chance to review that?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
Yep. It's
Any
listed to me.
questions, comments?
Nope.
I do not.
Do I have a motion to accept the new scope of work for Kimberly Groff Consulting?
So moved.
And a second?
Second.
All in favor? Joanne, aye.
Jack, aye.
Mark, aye.
All right. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Kim.
Thanks, Kim. Glad you're available for that.
Yeah. All right. And now on to the meat. So I'm going to, at this point, hand it over, I think maybe to you, Kim, just to kind of give us a quick update on what's been happening since our last meeting. And then we'll talk about the sampling analysis plan that's in a draft right now, as well as the public involvement plan, which I always want to do public participation, get it wrong. But anyway, Kim.
Great. Thank you, Joanne. Great to be here today, and there's a lot happening. So we have gotten together, Jeff and Matt and I, and ESS has made a lot of headway since we last met. We reviewed a work plan outline, which I signed off on. And also they have developed a draft sampling and analysis plan, which they'd like to walk you through today, as well as a public involvement plan as well. And then Joanne, I think there may have also been a need to kind of discuss, there was in the scope of services that was approved, there were some optional tasks. And we should probably focus on that a little bit to make sure that everybody's comfortable with kind of the final cost estimate to implement the program that's been proposed. Does that sound like a plan? I don't know how you want to, would you rather us get into the weeds a little bit and then worry about the budget, or do you want to look at the budget first and then get into the weeds?
I don't have a preference. Mark, Jack, do you?
I do not.
I'd rather do the budget last.
Okay. So with that very brief introduction, I think I should turn it over to Jeff and Matt to kind of walk us through, maybe start with the sampling and analysis plan, and then we could get into the public involvement plan. And the other thing that I just want to put on everybody's radar is that when we met, we had thought kind of linearly about having EPA QAP approval before we initiated sampling. And we're actually thinking that we don't need that QAP approval, that there's a pretty low risk that it would derail anything that we planned. And so we're thinking that we may be able to get out there and begin sampling probably early fall, which would be really, really great. So I got to give ESS a shout out because they really pulled things together in a very quickly and very efficiently. So I'll turn it over to Matt and Jeff.
Thanks, Kim. And yeah, I think Jeff and I concur with your statement about the QAP. Maybe we're jumping ahead of things here, but we believe that EPA will be able to, it sounds like they'll be able to review it in a timely manner, and that we also do not necessarily need to wait for their approval to proceed with the sampling. So that was
Great news.
good to hear. And I don't think it all will affect the actual quality of the work that we do. So it's really kind of just closing the loop with them to make sure everybody's on the same page. So with that, I guess we can jump into the SAP. Would it be helpful for me to share my screen, or how would people prefer to move forward with that?
That sounds good to me. If that's what you'd like to do, go ahead.
Okay.
Oh, actually, no, you should be able to do it. I think you've got permission.
Let's see.
And these documents
no,
haven't
there we
been
go.
circulated yet, correct, Joanne? Have they been circulated to the group?
They have, I believe,
Okay.
Jack and Mark, you guys got it, I think yesterday. Or it might have been today. No, yesterday.
Okay.
Yeah,
Yes.
and we also included Mr. Dubois
Right.
as a courtesy.
Great.
Okay. All right, so you should be seeing the sampling and analysis plan document. I actually did not start at the beginning just because the beginning has sort of a lot of fluff in it, cover page and such. I thought maybe we could just kind of skip to the product design section, but if anybody wants to go over anything on the first couple of pages, we certainly can.
Yeah, sounds good to skip the fluff.
Okay, great. So I think the first thing that we really did of substance here is sort of define the sampling domain. So where are we actually going to be collecting our samples from under this project? And obviously the focus is Silver Lake, although we do plan to do some sampling from the diversion sources. Most of the sampling that we plan to do is Silver Lake or tributaries to Silver Lake or the outlet. So I will scroll down to that figure here. As you can see, we've sort of laid out several different categories of sampling locations. We've got in red, tributary and outlet sampling locations. So these are stream sites. In green, we have points that represent sort of the centroid of where we would do our groundwater sampling segments on the lake. And then in blue, we have the primary deep water in-lake sampling location. These are just our planned locations for right now, just so that, for the benefit of everybody to sort of review and see what in general we're looking to do. I think the actual final location of some of these sites will change a little bit based on field conditions. I know I was able to meet with Mike Sassine at Veolia, and he did indicate that the deep hole of the lake he thinks is about 75 feet deep and is probably a little closer to being directly off the shoreline of directly across from the water treatment plant. So once we actually do our bathymetry mapping, we'll have a better idea for where it is exactly. And so that location may move just based on that. But for the most part, I think these are just intended to be representative of the main tributary sources. So up here on the north, we've got Tubbs Meadowbrook, and then we've got the other two minor tributaries coming in on the eastern side of the lake here. And then obviously the outlet of the lake down into the Jones River, and Forge Pond first, and then Jones River here. And the reason that we picked the groundwater locations that we did is we wanted to sort of ensure that we had reasonably good geographic distribution of these locations, but also that we were picking up background spots with low development in the watershed. So that's what the northwestern location is. It's a relatively undeveloped portion of the shoreline. The northeastern is also sort of similar. And then we tried to pick two spots that were a little bit more developed on the southwestern and eastern shoreline. And what we'll be doing there with the groundwater sampling is sampling for nutrients, essentially to establish a baseline of what may be coming in and what rates those nutrients may be coming in from shallow groundwater. And if we have septic issues, we're hoping that that would be something that would alert us to that fact. We are aware that there were septic issues in the past around Silver Lake, but we are not sure what the status is right now. So I think this will sort of bring us up to speed on some of that and tell us if we still have a problem or not. Let's see, this deep water location is actually, it's represented as 1 point, but I think as many people on the commission already are aware, we're actually going to be doing a whole lot of different things in the water column there. So we will have a data logger array that is set up in that location where we'll have data loggers at the surface and at the bottom of the lake that will be telling us about water quality and temperature as well as water level. So we should be able to use those to monitor all of those things sort of independently from the numbers that we'll be able to get on the official lake level. And we'll also be collecting vertical profiles there whenever we go out to sample. So we'll put our boat there and we'll collect profiles of water quality through the water column on those days that we visit. And in the tributary locations, each of those we plan to have water level loggers deployed at those locations so that we'll actually be able to see changes in water level over time. We'll be doing discharge measurements there, and at the end of the project, we'll be able to use the discharge measurements that we've measured in the field, along with the water level measurements that we've logged with the loggers, and create a discharge record for each of those sites. So we'll be able to see how much volume of water is coming into the lake from those different sources. And then we compare that up with the water quality data that we get for each of those sources, and that will tell us something about the external load of what we're sampling for into Silver Lake from those specific sources. We did not include the diversion sources on this map just for really the reason of scale. We could easily display these in one single map here, extending to include Monpont and Furnace. I think people are aware where those are. And we are planning on collecting some samples from those locations as well. And we've indicated that in the text, but they don't show up on this map. So that's sort of an overview of where the field program we think will be implemented. Does anybody have any questions on that at this point? All right.
I never gave you the bathymetry file, which has everything you possibly could want in there. Well, they did. I think they did a 1/10 of an inch to 5 feet, and then they did 5 feet contours, and they have the entire map and stuff. It's just a big file. So last we talked, somebody was going to set up a way to transmit that to you or give that to you, but you should have it, and it would save you a lot of time.
Yeah, we do have a project folder set up that we've been testing with Frank and Kim, and I think it seems to be functional from what I can tell for transferring files. Have you guys had any issues with that?
I would assume you would want it, Matt. It was a well done project. So.
What was the source for the bathymetry?
Kohler and Colantonio, 2 years out in a boat. They're basically doing the same thing. They mapped the entire lake. They have the depths. They can pinpoint your 75-footer, all that stuff, and maybe save you a lot of time and effort. I mean, you can do what you want to do, but I just think you should have it.
Sure. Yeah. No, I think that would be helpful to have.
I think the shoreline, in some areas might have changed just because of the wind and the drawdowns, but I can't imagine that the deep holes have. So.
Right.
And
Yeah,
I
and
put
even
a link. Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Matt.
Go ahead.
I was just going to say, Pine, I put a link in the chat. Just you can, if you're having trouble with the shared folder that they're talking about, you can do WeTransfer as well. It's free.
But you need to tell me who to transfer to or what to transfer. So I just need a little direction on how to get that to you. That's all.
Super. So I'll leave that with you and Matt.
Just taking some notes here. Okay. Yeah, and I was just going to say, even if the deep hole has changed slightly, it's possible it may have filled up a little bit with sediment, but that's probably not going to be more than a foot or two here or there, I would think. So, all right, great. That's the primary thing that we set out to do was, describe the sampling locations, and plan them, and as I mentioned, they may shift a little bit, but I think these are the sources that we want to pick up and the areas that we want to take a look at. We do have a table here, and Kim did call attention to the fact that we've got a typo here where we have 2 site IDs by the same name, so we'll fix that in the revised version. But this sort of gives a description of each of the locations here, and you can see here we include Furnace Pond and East Monpont Pond in the table, and what type of water body they are, or what type of sample they are, and the description of where they are. So then
Matt, I'm just going to pause. Sorry, Matt, I'm just going to pause you for 1 second. So we have Bob, Valerie, and Sheila Vaughn who joined us as well. Bob and Sheila, if at any point you have any comments on what Matt's talking about, please raise your hand or type something in the chat box, and I'll allow you to speak with the Zoom functions. Sorry, Matt, go ahead.
No problem. So the next section of the SAP essentially breaks out the sampling design into the different components of the things that we're doing. And I won't, again, get in too far into the details here, because I think at the kickoff meeting, we described a lot of the overview here of what we plan to do. But essentially, we've got laid out here 4 different components. You'll notice that there's one component that is missing, which is the sediment sampling, just because that I think is probably something we'll discuss today about whether the commission would like to move forward with that. That could be added if it is approved very easily, but I left it out of here for now for simplicity. But we have the bathymetry, aquatic plant, and benthic surveys, which is the first component of our sampling design, and then the in-lake water column and quality sampling is the second. The upstream and downstream monitoring, this is the tributaries and the outlet, and then the groundwater assessment. So this is just providing more detail on the locations that I just described and sort of what we were going to be doing at each of those locations. Gives an idea of how many sites we think we're going to go to. For instance, the bathymetry and plant mapping survey, we're anticipating doing that at least 350 locations. Talks about how we're going to actually record those locations, both the position of them and the data. So we'll be using a GPS that's capable of sub-meter horizontal accuracy, just to make sure that we know we're really in the right spot and getting the information that we think we're getting. Talks a little bit about when we plan to do things. So again, based on our discussion with Mike Sassine, Silver Lake is actually pretty high right now. Water levels are pretty good. I think if it was a more typical year or a drought year where we had low water levels, we might consider postponing the bathymetry. And again, Pine, just caveating that with looking at what you send us as well, but just because we may have trouble getting everywhere. But when I was out there with Mike on Thursday, there was no indication that we really need to push that off. I mean, the water levels are completely, I think he said we were about 5 inches down, which is really not bad at all. It's essentially full for our purposes, at least. So I think we can get in there as soon as we have approval to do that work. Same thing with aquatic plants. I think we should be able to reach all locations in the lake that we would like to do our mapping at. So really no constraints there. I think we can move forward with things as planned this year in the late summer or early fall, as Kim mentioned. And then just so everybody can see, here's sort of our sampling grid for Silver Lake. So this is, we went with a cell-based approach, which gives us both coverage across the entire lake, as well as the ability to move individual point locations around to allow us to select the most representative spot within each of those cells. So this basically makes sure that we don't miss any part of the lake, but it also allows us to sort of customize things on the fly in the field based on what we're actually seeing. So let's say we had a cell where, you know, 1/4 of it had plants and the rest of it had none. We can actually select the most representative location to sample that cell, so it doesn't get characterized as one thing or the other if it's got both in it. Or we can choose to add an additional location there if we think we need to do that. So it gives us some structure for the survey, but also allows us enough flexibility to develop a really good map for you guys. So that was the idea behind this. And then I think, as we mentioned at the kickoff meeting, we do plan on doing macroinvertebrate grab samples with a small sediment dredge. Most likely, we have other methods, but I think that's what we'll end up using here across the whole lake. So we picked depth locations approximately 5, 15, 25, 35, 45, 55, and 65 feet. And we picked those locations so that we could get a good spread of different water depths to see which water depths are impacted by low oxygen versus which ones don't seem to be, and then be able to sort of figure out where that transition zone is, where we have some level of oxygen, but it's starting to drop down low. And we set out a plan for collecting those samples, preserving them, and then bringing back to our office and having them identified by a certified taxonomist. And then moving on to the in-lake water column and quality sampling. This is where we discuss more details about actually deploying the data loggers so that we have continuous data logging. Kim, I think you had a question about, are we going to do 2 deployments here? And that is, yes, currently what we're planning. So we would plan to deploy these in the late summer along with the rest of the, our first sampling event essentially, and then pull them out before ice cover. Assuming that we get ice cover this winter. And then we would redeploy them in the spring once the ice is out, and then have them log through late winter, early spring when there's no ice cover. So it would not be a continuous data set if we do have ice cover, just so that we can preserve the actual logger array and make sure nothing is damaged or moved around too much. Again, I do know, talking to Mike on Thursday, that the solar bees in the past that they have deployed out there have been affected by ice cover to one degree or another. So I think it's something that we should anticipate is likely to happen at some part of the winter. So we're just making plans to sort of be able to pull that stuff out and then redeploy when it's safe to do so, and we don't have to worry about the ice. And then we also detail that we have the 6 sampling events scheduled for that in-lake sampling, where we'll be taking the vertical profiles. And this table here actually breaks down the analytes and parameters we'll be sampling for the positions that we'll sample within the water column. And you can see some of these things we sample surface, mid-depth, and bottom. Other things we're only sampling at the surface. And then there's a few things here where we have a meter that will actually go from the surface down to the bottom, and we'll collect readings while we're out there every meter in the water column. So we've kind of tallied up the number of visits, number of samples we're collecting per visit, and the total number of samples for you. So you can kind of see what we're getting out of that 6-visit program. I will say, even though it has not been approved yet, we have added in the E. coli and cyanotoxin sampling. I think we felt like it was appropriate to do that just because those optional tasks were really more just additional analytes. So it was easy to add these into the table and just show you how those would break down. And this is just for the in-water or the in-lake sampling in Silver Lake. On the next page, we have the same breakdown for the source waters at Furnace Pond and East Monpont Pond, and how many samples we collect there. Then moving on to the upstream and downstream monitoring, it's a similar setup here. The main difference here is we will have, we'll have these data loggers out, but we're just going to leave them out there for the full 8 months. We're really not worried about losing those in the winter. The water tends to be either moving or the location might be dry. So at certain times. So I think we'll just leave those loggers out through the whole program. And we do anticipate being able to visit each of those locations, access dependent, of course, but I think we'll be able to get out there for 8 different sampling rounds. So starting in late summer, going through the winter and into next spring. And then finally, we've got the groundwater assessment. Currently, the timing for that is we're anticipating is April of next year to coincide with the seasonal high water table. So that's probably the one of the elements that we won't really have any data for this year, but we do have planned to start doing that collection next year. And I think I already showed everybody the anticipated locations of the segments that we'd be sampling in the lake. We have more detail here about how we would actually deploy everything. So just so everybody is reminded, we would be measuring both the flow of water, the in seepage into the lake. So we'd be using seepage meters to do that. Those are really just deployed on the bottom of the lake, installed for most of a day with a known amount of water in the bag in a closed system. And at the end of the day, we come check the bag and see how much the water volume has changed. And that tells us how much flow there was from groundwater into the lake. So we plan to deploy 2 of those at each segment. And then we will also be getting water quality separately from the water quantity estimation. And that will be extracting with a small handheld mini well. So basically be pumping groundwater out and compositing it into a sample for each of the segments, and then sending that to the laboratory to be measured.
Matt, can I interrupt for a minute?
Sure.
So the in-lake water column and quality sampling beginning in August and extending through April. So there won't be anything on this happening generally in May, June, or July. So if we're missing those 3 months, do you think those are crucial to what the conclusions may come out of this study? Is there any information that you would have gotten from those? Because it won't be a full calendar year, I guess is my point. And do we think that matters?
Yeah, so I think what we will see from how things are currently set up is, we'll have, assuming we have ice cover, we will see the ice off, and then the subsequent turnover of the lake following ice off. That's a critical period to get. So whether we continue with things as planned or we extend, we'll see that at the very least. The piece that we would be missing is sort of that transition from the turnover conditions to the lake resetting up in the summertime. So that's what happens in that sort of May and June period that you mentioned and into July. That can be a fairly critical time for some water bodies. I don't know if it will be for Silver Lake. If cyanobacteria blooms are a concern, in some places they can happen earlier in the season, typically end of May or June at the earliest. But most water bodies see those in late summer or fall. And I think what we've got already targeted to start up later this summer will probably capture that end of things. So yes, we are missing a little bit of the seasonal cycle.
Is there like a critical point in the project once we get going at which we have to decide whether or not to extend? I'm just thinking if we do want to extend for those additional 3 months, like when is the kind of cutoff for that?
Right. I mean, we'll have our equipment out there in the spring. So I think we could make a call on that anytime in early 2022 and be fine.
Okay.
It's we're already planning to go back out and redeploy in lake, like I said, in hopefully March. It'll be warm enough to be able to do that. So if you did want to extend at that point, you'd certainly have the option. We could just leave things in place and carry them as long as you want to go into the growing season.
Okay.
And actually, I was pretty much done with presenting the plan. I think the only thing I was going to skip to here is, we do have this project detail that we provided as a separate deliverable, which we've also included an updated version of here in the plan. And this sort of shows the schematic of the timing for each of these different events, which are shown here in green, and the deliverables, which are shown in orange. So if we have any questions on this, we can certainly discuss this as well.
Does anybody have any questions or comments?
No. No.
Can I just ask something? I'm not
Go for
familiar.
it.
Do you mind? I'm not familiar with, I don't know what kind of data loggers and et cetera that you're using, whether you're suspending or tying them to the floor of the lake or whatnot. Just, you're worried about ice, but I just want to say there's, two things that I've noticed in the lake. One, there's a lot of wind at certain times, a lot of, because it's open body of water and coming from that sort of southwesterly, which we have the prevailing winds. And that's really what dislodges those solar bees, if you want my opinion. But so you might want to, think about that a little bit. And the other thing is just the number of, swans and geese. So, and they can be kind of nuisancey because they're curious, but, I've counted hundreds of each out there. So it's not a trivial number. So just in terms of, maintaining your equipment and whatnot. So just a heads up.
Right, and I think we, in our field notes, we'll also be cognizant of resident waterfowl like that as a potential source for bacteria or for nutrients as well.
Yeah, and I think, I have no idea really, but, whether the lake is full or the lake is drying, they're there. If their lake is drying, they're grazing along, the dry lake shore and fertilizing everything with wild abandon. And if the lake is full, they're floating around and diving in and eating the plants that are floating to the surface and doing the same thing. So it would be great if we could figure out, the difference between the waterfowling and the waterfowl fouling and the human fouling in terms of, what it is we can actually do something about.
Right. I think one thing we can do with the field notes we have, as we kind of bring all these sources together, we can, if we know how many waterfowl we're seeing on average out there, and can sort of connect the dots over time, since we're going to be doing this study for a long enough period of time to say, well, they're out there during these months, and this is how many we typically see. We can come up with an estimate of how much, especially on the nutrient end of things, how much they contribute over the course of the year. And that can tell us, is it a big number? Is it a small number? Is it something we need to be concerned about? So I think that'll be helpful.
Yeah, and I it does change seasonally, because the birds, many of them are migratory, but I don't know if they're adopting a resident sort of habitat at all. Remains to be seen, but or studied, I guess. Thank you. The other question I had, there was one note in your definitions about the sediment water interface, and I wasn't really sure whether you were talking about the bottom of the lake or what.
Yeah, that's just the lake bottom.
Okay. That was it.
And it is kind of a mushy thing because especially if you get a lot of fine sediments, there's a portion of that lake bottom that's has a very high moisture content, so it's almost soupy, and then it becomes a little firmer. So if you've ever stepped into a soft spot in a lake, you can go pretty far down before you hit the real bottom of it. So it is kind of hard to define, but that's just a fancy term for lake bottom. Yes.
Thank you.
Anybody else have any questions? No? If there are no other questions on the sampling and analysis plan, so do you want to dive into the public involvement plan now? How does that sound? Jeff, Matt, Kim? Yeah, okay.
That'd be good because they're so connected to one another, and then maybe we could zoom back out and look at the overall schedule and timing of everything.
I think that's a good idea, Kim.
Great.
See if I can
My
share.
my only question is, are any motions needed on this discussion? Is it, so we might want to divide it up into sections, but if not, let's just keep going.
Yeah, let's keep talking about it. Because I believe the process is, this was, and correct me if I'm wrong, Kim, Jeff, Matt, I think we were going to talk about it kind of informally at this meeting. And if the commission is comfortable enough after hearing both, then we could approve them with any suggested changes, issue them out for public comment. And then at that point, we'd have to formalize it.
That's right, because the way the schedule is, we're looking at public involvement in August, September timeframe. So having approval sooner rather than later would be helpful to that schedule.
Okay, so let's hear about the public involvement plan, and then we can go from there.
Sorry, just trying to get my right screen, folks.
Yeah, Jeff, I can see the document on my
Can you?
end. Yes.
Yeah, you've got a Word document, it looks like.
Yeah, I mean, if you guys can see it, I can't see it, unfortunately, on my end.
Oh.
Which I'm trying to figure out why.
You could zoom in a little bit on it, so I don't have to open my own document because I can't read that.
Yeah, I mean, I can certainly zoom.
You've got both pages up and side by side.
Yep. Hopefully that looks a little bit better.
Up there. It does look better. I still need to keep mine open though.
I can zoom in a little bit more too.
Thanks. That's great. Thank you.
So I think one of the intents of putting together this plan was to try to keep it pretty succinct and pretty straightforward. We found with public involvement plans of this sort, they can often be too wordy. It's really rather to try to lay out, as we've done in this plan, what are the key objectives of the public involvement plan? What are we trying to achieve? So the way I've kind of set these up in the past is kind of establish what the objectives are. You can certainly see those are laid out here, and these were really gleaned from the RFP, and then kind of how we set up our response to the RFP as well to try to address these goals. So you can see here, we really have kind of 6 objectives here. We're really to present the scope of the proposed water quality monitoring program during a public meeting, provide an opportunity for the public to provide oral and written comments, provide certain key stakeholders a copy of the draft directly, so we can solicit any feedback from them or get buy-in on the approach, and provide a written overview of the final SAP to the public, which is really that initial informational leaflet that we had proposed that would come out after we have that initial meeting. And then we've kind of got the follow-on objectives after we've performed this initial year of work, but we really wanted to be able to come back and present those results to the public. So talk about it in the beginning, what we're going to do, come back after the end of that initial year and provide them with an overview of that, what we found, and then what we might be thinking about as far as management alternatives at that point, if we are thinking about those at this point. And then again, very similar to that informational leaflet in the beginning, we would also have kind of an overview of the initial year of monitoring that we were in written form. And those informational leaflets, assume that we'll provide those through the CDC-WDC website, so we'd have access there. And then what we did with the excuse me. What we did is we kind of assigned those objectives to, when would we tackle those, when we do those. And really in the putting together the RFP, what we set up was really, we've got this initial sampling and analysis plan review meeting that you can see up here. And we're targeting that for August, possibly into September. Again, trying to move this stuff as quickly through the public involvement process as possible. And then we're going to have this public listening session, which we've really targeted that date for June. And again, Joanne, that kind of goes back to your comment as far as when did we kind of try to tie up the field sampling for this initial stage, was in thinking that we'd want to have some time to get that data back from the lab, be able to assimilate it, evaluate it, and include it in that initial presentation as well. So that's kind of the timing there. And then what we did is we went back to those 6 objectives and we kind of tied those 6 objectives to each one of these meetings, kind of as an anchor point for when we're going to try to tackle each one of these objectives. And we did this through kind of assigning goals to each one of these as far as what would we do to meet that objective. So for objective number 1, again, presenting that sampling and analysis plan during a public meeting, it's really the goal, right? The goal is have that public meeting. Announce that through the CPCW DC website, present the scope, and it really then ties right then into objective 2, which is, as part of that meeting, provide an opportunity for the public to provide some feedback or input into the draft plan, or what we call in the RFP, kind of that draft final plan. Assuming that the draft plan is what went into the commission. Once we get any feedback from the commission or Kim or Pine or anybody, revise that, we'll come out with a draft final plan, and then that's what would go out to the public. And also as part of objective 3, that's what would be sent out in electronic format to some of the key stakeholders that were identified in the RFP. Those being the City of Brockton, the Mass Department of Health, Mass DEP, and then the involved watershed associations and alliances. And then again, the final objective that's really keyed and anchored to that initial SAP review meeting is the production and distribution of that informational leaflet, which really will introduce the project, introduce the scope, and introduce the kind of the objectives of why we're doing the project, the water quality monitoring project. I'll take a break right there. Any questions as far as this kind of initial phase of the proposed public involvement?
I've got 2 questions. So the first one for Frank. Frank, how long do we have to, is it still 48 hours to give notice of a public meeting, or is it 1 month, or what are the rules around that?
It's still 48 hours. It's always been 48 hours. A public meeting that a governing board attends and deliberates at.
Okay, so if we do one where we like specifically promote and want the public to come and feedback on, that's still considered just a regular public meeting, basically.
Well, actually, that doesn't even need notice, as long as the commissioners themselves are not debating. Public meeting law is only for elected officials.
Ah,
So it's not
okay.
the public, it's the elected officials deliberating that constitutes need for notice.
Oh,
So
okay.
the 3 commissioners can go there and listen, and we won't have to post that.
Oh, okay.
You just can't go in a corner, talk about something and come out with an answer.
Gotcha. And then my second question was, so I'm just thinking about the timing of the leaflet and specifically what we want that leaflet to be. And I think what's proposed here is that it would be a summary of the project kind of leaflet. And I know in the past, we've kind of talked about just a leaflet that introduces Silver Lake and why water quality is important and things like that. So like an educational leaflet more than a project summary leaflet. I just wanted to know, Mark and Jack, whether a leaflet that's a project leaflet that would be available after the SAP is finalized for any folks that want information on the project is kind of what we want.
I'm sorry, Joanne, I don't understand your question. Could you repeat it?
So we've talked, so sorry, that was kind of convoluted. So in the past, we've talked about having a leaflet that is just about Silver Lake and water quality and why it's important and the fact that it's a drinking water source, et cetera. So just kind of a general educational leaflet that could be used at public meetings or given to elected officials, that sort of thing.
Mhm.
Here, what's being proposed is a leaflet that just summarizes the project, basically what the project's about, what it's going to do, when the results are going to have, come out, presuming, that sort of stuff. I just want to reconfirm that that's what we want in this project, that both Jack, you, and Mark we're all on the same page about that this is a project leaflet, not the educational leaflet that we had talked about before.
Yeah, that's what my understanding of what we want is, speaking for myself.
Cool. And Mark?
Not to throw a wrench in it, but I just think in general, I'm anti-leaflet. I just don't think anybody reads them. I think they're a waste of money and time, but I'd rather put it, on the website and direct people to the website.
That's what it's going to be. We're not going to have any printed. It's going to be a digital. We didn't set aside any budget right now for printing. So it's just a digital leaflet that they're going to produce.
Gotcha. So, okay. Leaflet, I took that literally.
Okay. Yeah. Confusing terminology. So I guess it would be in the shape of a leaflet, but it'd still just be a PDF.
I am on board.
Awesome. Okay. That's all I've got for this. Anybody else have any questions on this or comments on the public involvement plan?
I
do, but Mark, you can go first.
No, go ahead.
I don't know if you want to have comments now. Do you want me to finish going through it?
I'm sorry. Yes, please do. Let's do that first. Sorry.
Yeah, I didn't want to. No, again, if anybody wants to speak up at any time, I just thought I'd finish running through it, and then if you guys want to provide comments at that point. So again, getting back to our objectives, if you remember in the beginning, we had established kind of 6 objectives. Just talked about the objectives that are really keyed and anchored to that SAP review meeting, review and the public involvement. The second 2 objectives are really then trying to take the information that we gather from that initial year of study and make a presentation to the public again. Another opportunity to really try to engage the people in what we're doing out here and what the outcome is. And then ultimately, what might be the outcome, what might be looking at as far as potential management alternatives and things like that. And again, these 2 objectives are really, again, objective 5 is really presenting the results. And then objective 6 is, again, providing that kind of informational digital leaflet that would be provided on the commission website. And really that, again, very focused, very succinct type of public involvement plan. And then we had identified some project contacts at the end, Frank on behalf of the commission, and Matt as the project manager on behalf of ESS. Certainly we can add to that list if people think there should be more contacts on here. But again, at this point, I guess I'd open it up to any comments from the commission or any other attendees.
Joanne, I have a few comments on it.
Go for it, Jack.
I think that what we're looking at here is not really a public outreach. It seems to be to a select group of organizations that are already interested in the issue. And there's some obvious candidates for outreach to other parties that seem appropriate to me. For example, there are 4 communities that post Silver Lake. At a minimum, I would think their respective boards of selectmen and boards of health would be part of the outreach. There is the Monpont, I never get the name right, Pond Association, might have some interest in this. And also, posting it on our website is fine, the leaflets, but I think we need to get word out in other media that it's there so people go to it, because I don't know what our website traffic is, but I don't think it's that high. So I really think we need to bump this, the outlets up quite a bit on this. And not,
Yeah.
might even consider advertising it in the newspaper, so people know that it's happening, because we're kind of preaching to the choir here otherwise. That's my thought.
Jack, can you clarify what you mean by outreach? So you mean basically just extending an invitation for them to comment either at the meeting or?
Yeah, something like that. Some
Okay.
kind of a specific invitation that reaches those entities, so they can't say they didn't know about it when that comes up, but also they may have something to say about what's happening. Is the work is taking place within, for example, those 4 communities. They really ought to know that it's happening, and have some input into it. They may have their own consultants that are looking at other subjects that might have some interest in it, or contribute to it, or take some information from it. And also, it's public funds. It should be everyone should have some ability to know what's going on with their money. My other comment is specific, and not that I'm a big fan of this necessarily, but the city of Brockton is an environmental justice area, and we need to consider whether we're obligated to provide translation services for this, so that all the public can truly understand what's going on. I don't know how we would do that in this case, but on private projects, that's a kind of a standard requirement right now with increased submittals, and it probably makes sense to at least identify some of the populations in Brockton, so their budding environmental engineers can know what's going on with their water system and maybe participate.
I think, sorry, does anybody else have any questions or comments? Mark, do you have anything?
No.
Joanne,
Anybody else? Go ahead, Pine.
I agree with what Jack just said. I was going to include the Monpont Watershed, the Pembroke Watershed Association, which is another watershed association that's just about Furnace Pond, and the advisory board, really, because of their representation of all those towns. So I think those additions are important, and Mark might have something to throw in about the people that live around the lake. The other thing I was going to say is Pembroke has a well, a water supply well, very close to your one of your sampling stations for the diversion of Tubbs Meadow Brook into the lake there. So they'd probably be interested in, and you might see some effect of that in your I just wanted to throw that out while I was thinking. That's really all. I think the public sessions are important, and I think that if you can get it on the town calendars, like you get your meetings, Joanne, on the town calendars, that might help to sort of spark some interest, because I think the interest is the important part, especially if it leads to some changes in behavior around the lake, or required changes around the lake. Thanks.
I'd like to suggest I think a few steps here that would be helpful. So Frank, if you could email the the advisory board and the commissioners and Pine, and Dawn and kind of our core group, the names of the people who are signed up to our e-blast, then I'd ask everybody who gets that to review who's on there. My assumption, and I haven't looked at it for a long time, so I probably should and will as well, is that the watershed associations and these folks that we've just been talking about are on there and therefore receive our notices. So we should definitely double check that list to make sure that everybody that should be on there is actually on there. I know we updated it with all of the city councilors after Brockton's election, as well as the new mayor. And we haven't had, I don't think, and some of the major changes with state level electeds as well too. So we should probably review that list to make sure that that's solid. I like the idea, Jack, of putting it in the newspaper. I guess my question would be, there are multiple newspapers, and I think Frank, you posted the RFP, I think in one. I can't remember which one was decided. Was it the Patriot Ledger?
No, Old Colony, the Old Colony.
Okay.
Because it's local to Plymouth.
Okay, so we can ask Frank to post the meeting again in that newspaper. We can post in all the newspapers, but it's like, what, 150, 200 bucks a pop. So I don't know if that's a good use of money necessarily.
A lot of times, if I could, Chair, just a press release out to the newspapers. We already have WATD that's involved with the organization. And if we just do a press release, they really love that, with some of the, plans that ESS Group has and whatnot, that could go a long way, and that's free.
And that's a good idea.
And it's likely that the residents around the lake will notice if there's people on boats out there, and so it'll probably save you a lot of phone calls to somebody.
So, okay, so we'll check the email list before our next meeting. Kim, do you think you could draft a press release for us that we can discuss and approve at our next meeting?
Yeah, I can.
Or maybe draft a release that you can then send out to the three of us and individually get comments from us.
Yeah.
To kind of speed up the process.
Yeah, and I'm wondering too, Joanne, just as a matter of process here, will the commission want to review these documents, have a couple days after this meeting to review and provide input on them? I'm thinking specifically if there are folks that we've missed that we need to do specific outreach to under objective 3, that we should make sure that we have a list of all those people and the point of contact, just because as things start to move, we could get organized, ahead of time of who is the key. We know some of them, but if we could get a complete list of who the key contacts are, and it seems like the town Board of Health folks should be included in that along with the watershed groups.
So are you suggesting, Kim, that we add a layer to this? So we
I'm just suggesting that under goal 1, we make sure that we have everybody identified there that we expect to do specific outreach to.
Yeah. So I guess
in addition to publicizing the public meeting.
Yeah. So I think that would be our e-blast list. And then we build on that once Frank sends it out to see who's missing on that.
Yeah, we do not have the Board of Health listed. I can have them added. I can ask Nancy, do you want all 7 Board of Health listed, or just the 4 around Silver Lake for now, or probably all 7, right?
I would. So I would say at a minimum, the ones that are along the lake, and also Brockton, because it's its drinking water source. Mark and Jack, do you think it should be all boards of health? I'm just not sure the other boards of health and the further communities are, I don't want to presume they're not going to be interested. They may well be, but it's just a lot of work on Nancy's side.
No, that's pretty quick.
No? Okay.
No, it's not a lot of work. We should hit everybody in the district because they all are potential users if this is a water supply by state statute.
Okay. So in that same vein, I mean, do we want to, I don't think we've got all select board members on our list.
No, they are. All 7
they are.
Selectmen are.
All 7. Awesome.
So it's right now the list includes everybody that's reached out to us of course, the commissioners, the advisory board, everybody that's reached out to us, all the state Senate delegation, the state House delegation, all town administrators or managers, and each of the 7 boards of all of the selectmen in each of the 7 towns.
Okay. So it sounds like maybe the place where we need the most work on that list is just double checking and triple checking to make sure that the nonprofit groups are all on there and some of the more local groups. We should probably put the chambers of commerce. I think Metro South is already on there. But okay, so if you send that link, if you send that list out, Frank, to folks, then we can make sure that that's the right list before we start using it, that nobody's missing.
Yep, so I'll add the players that you discussed, which are the boards of health from directors from each of the towns, along with the Chamber of Commerce's directors, and then I'll send that out within the week.
Super. And then Kim will help us draft a press release. Jack, do you feel like a press release is enough, or do you still want to see it advertised in one of the newspapers?
I think it's a press release is a cheap way to get it out there. So I do have another suggestion. The point was made up by Pine about people seeing people in boats out on the lake. I think we probably ought to, each of us ought to be making appearances in front of the various boards of selectmen to let them know what's going on, so that when calls come in and that sort of thing, they know, and they like make them feel, kind of underscore that we value their opinions on it and their involvement. So I could cover Plumpton, Halifax, and Kingston.
The challenge would be getting on the agendas for those prior to the finalization of this.
Well, they pretty much meet every week, I think. So, and they usually have, you say you're going to be a couple of minutes, so usually they're fine.
Would a letter to the boards suffice and be an easier path?
It'd be easier, but it's also lacks the personal touch of actually appearing in person. So it's up to you guys, but I'm in favor of doing it in person.
I'm just not sure. I don't think it could be done in Brockton in time, because I know getting on the agenda in Brockton, you're not going to get immediately on the next meeting. I can try to get a resolve filed, but I also know that they're in summer session, I think, so they don't meet as frequently.
There may be issues, and then just say, well, we tried to let you know, but you can put us on the agenda, so the notification will have to suffice.
Yeah. Mark, do you have time to commit to appear at some of these in person?
I'll make time. I just don't think the draw is there.
Yeah.
I just don't think anybody's going to think it's going to be important enough to be on an agenda.
Yeah. I think being on the agenda for the end tail of this project to present the results and talk about that, I think absolutely. But I think let's do a letter. Go ahead, Jack.
Let's think about this long term. There's such a thing as good politics, and right now we're just doing a study, which is interesting and may have valuable results. But the goal of this commission is to fix a major problem with the water supply, which is going to take hundreds of millions of dollars and the sign on by a lot of people. They need to start hearing from us if that's ever going to happen. We had meetings at the State House earlier with the commission, things like that. And a lot of stuff happened after we had those meetings in person with the people that we need their cooperation. So I don't think we should shy away from them. We should be seeing these people on a regular basis. And this is a good start. Let them know every step of the way.
Yeah. Do we
that selectman we see in Pembroke in August may be a state senator 2 years from now who we need the cooperation or whatever the big state budget number is to help get this thing fixed. So they'll remember. That's the cardinal rule of politics. Is it's always nice to ask. Never And never ignore people and never assume.
So to clarify what you're suggesting, so you want to, you're suggesting that commissioners appear before select boards to promote the SAP review meeting, the public review meeting.
Just in general to let them know what's going on and point, give them a pointer if they or people in their town or city want to participate, have comments to go to our website and see what's going on. I mean, you just never know. Somebody could be best friends with Jeff Bezos and convince him to give us $100 million to fix this. Just never know.
Yeah, I don't think anybody disagrees with the idea. I think it's just, so my concern, speaking, my concern is that I think our timeline's really tight. And I would like to, have everything finalized and things in the field so we get good data.
Well, I'm sorry to interrupt. Don't mistake my intent on this. I'm not specifically looking for the selectmen of, say, East Bridgewater to approve the sampling plan. I'm just looking to let them know what's going on, so that they understand that there's something happening, and that if there is some desire to get involved, then they can start talking to us. We're not going to hold up the plan over that.
So how about, let's do that. Maybe this is a compromise. What do you guys think about this? So what if we ask Frank and Kim to pull together a letter to the select board and the select board chairs and the council presidents to go out as soon as possible, in the next few days, if that can be done. And in that letter, we can offer to come before their boards to talk more about the project and invite them to the review meeting. So then we've made the offer, they've received a letter, they can choose whether or not they want us to appear. And if we can manage to appear prior to the deadline that we set for the review meeting today, when we want it to happen, then great. If not, they're aware of the meeting, they can participate in it. And if they still want us to appear after the SAP has been finalized, then we can just do it as like a public informational thing.
Sure.
I think that's great.
Yeah. Kim and Frank, do you think it'd be doable in the next couple of days to get a letter out to all the select boards and the council president in Brockton?
Yeah, we can draft something up for you to send out. And I'm also thinking that while we have everybody together, our next meeting isn't until kind of the end of August. Do you think we should target a date for this public meeting while we're all together?
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. I was thinking if we can use our end of August meeting to finalize these things, right? Because after the public meeting, there'll be the comments. And so then there'll be the final draft or the final SAP, and that's what we'll be voting on. Then if we can schedule something in between, then that's when we can do our public meeting. So we've currently got, did we set a date in August?
The 24th,
oh, yeah.
I think. Yeah.
The 24th at noon. Could we schedule so public meeting would have to be in the evening, I think.
Yes. For sure.
Jack and Mark, could you guys how long after a public meeting, Matt, do you guys need to consider the comments and the feedback and stuff?
Yeah, I think if we're compiling comments from the public, that can be done fairly quickly. I think that's kind of how we envisioned it, that once we have the SAP, essentially everybody's on board with what we're doing with the SAP, then the public comments are sort of more of an addendum that gets added on at the end.
Mm-hmm.
Unless anybody thinks that there's like a critical flaw in what we're doing, but I think something like that could be really pulled together quite quickly and sent back to the commission in just a few days.
So what if Mark and Jack, what are your evenings like on Monday, August 9 and Tuesday, August 10?
Looking.
The moment I'm available both evenings.
As am I.
Okay, so what if we schedule the public review meeting of the SAP on one of those 2 nights, and then allow people to submit written comments by the end of that week? So by the 13th, that would give ESS the week of the 16th to digest all that, so that when we come together on the 24th, we can hopefully vote on accepting the final SAP.
That sounds reasonable.
It does.
Matt and Kim, how does that sound to you guys? And Jeff?
Sounds good to me.
Does that hold anything up? Does that move things fast enough?
I think that allows us to get in the field in early September. So that would be, from my perspective, that would be sufficient.
That would be good.
If I could, Chair,
Yeah, please, Frank.
that I will tell you that we try to have meetings in August and attendance is,
Poor.
yeah, at the best. You know, especially on a, you know, even though water's so critical, you know, with such short notice and in August, which is one of the heaviest vacation months. I just want to set everybody's expectations.
Yeah.
You know, Zoom might increase the attendance because it's less of a commitment. Driving 2 or 3 towns away on a night, you know, 10, 15, 20 minutes to get there and back, you may have a little bit better via Zoom. I also want to make sure that you saw Sheila Vaughn, who is a selectman from Kingston, left some comments in the chat, just talking about her board of selectmen.
Oh, super. Thank you, Sheila. I didn't notice that, Frank. Thanks for pointing that out. Okay, so they meet every 2 weeks in Kingston. I don't think we can feasibly push it out to September. I mean, it is also a sampling analysis plan, quite frankly, just given my experience with these things in the planning field. I think we're unlikely to have many people participate anyway. I think we'll probably get a whole bunch more people interested once we've got results to actually present and then talk about what to do about them. So we could push it out to September, but then it's the start of the school as well, so that prevents people from coming. So I think we're kind of stuck with August, and we just do our best to get the word out. What do you think, Frank and I mean Jack and Mark?
I don't disagree with that.
Okay. So if we go for public meeting for the SAP on Tuesday the 10th at maybe 6:30.
Mhm.
Set the written comment deadline for Friday, August 13. And we'll have our commission meeting on the 24th at noon. So the only question left is, do we want to do the SAP public review meeting on the 10th in person or virtually? I would really love to do it both ways, but I don't think any technology in any of our towns, including OCPC, is quite ready for that.
The Kingston Board of Selectmen is going to meet that night.
On the 10th?
Yep. Based on the fact that they're meeting the 27th, yeah. And Sheila is on that board, so that would hurt her attendance at, unless Sheila, I know you're on, so maybe you know more than I do, but.
Yeah, hold on, let me
like this, the agenda. I mean, this.
Sheila, oh, and Al's on as well. I'm going to promote you guys both to panelists. Sheila, what time do you guys meet? Oh, she says I have to be there at 6.
Yes, she's still an attendee, not a panelist right now.
Oh, let me try this again.
It looks like.
There we go.
There I am.
There
Thanks,
you go.
guys.
Sorry about that. Hi, Sheila.
Hi, nice to see you all. So I do have selectmen at 6 p.m. Wednesdays are really good for me, but I mean, honestly, I don't want to not come, but 6:30 would be tough for me because we meet at 6 and we have a lot of a few things that are time sensitive that I know that I would have to physically be there.
Yeah. What about Monday? Because I'm just looking at Brockton's calendar as well. It looks like Monday is clear in August.
Monday's great.
What about, yeah? How does
I don't have
everybody feel
anything on
about?
Mondays unless I get a school committee meeting. So
Okay.
I'm on
So how does
okay,
so how does everybody feel about Monday the 9th?
That should work for me.
Yeah. Okay. And Jackie I'm all over the place today. Mark,
Yes.
you said you're available on both, so super.
Yep.
All right, so let's go with that. So we're not going to put anything in the newspaper. We'll do an e-blast. We'll pull together an agenda. Coming back to the translation point that was raised. So the way that we do it at Old Colony Planning Council and the way that the city of Brockton does it is that they normally don't offer things fully translated, but they will include lines at the top of documents that say, in Spanish, for example, to have this translated into Spanish, please contact. So we could include that both on the agenda for the SAP review meeting, as well as in the email blast that's sent out.
That sounds fine.
Okay, so I can get you that language, Frank. And I believe the top 3, so again, this is more from Brockton's point of view, is usually Cape Verdean, Spanish, and Haitian are the 3 usually I think that are included. Sometimes you see Portuguese. Okay. Was there anything else that we needed to cover? So we covered.
If we could, Chair,
Yeah.
was there a decision on Zoom versus where?
Oh, no, thank you, Frank.
I move that we have the meeting on Zoom.
Yep. Mark, how do you feel about that?
That's fine.
Zoom, let's do Zoom.
Um,
Oh, sorry, was somebody going to say something?
Joanne, it's Pine.
Yep.
I just wanted to remind you that there is going to be a public hearing by Brockton on that resource management plan from Unponded Pond on August 3rd. So that would be a good way to get it, advertise it, if you will, to them.
That's a good idea, yeah.
That's all I wanted to say. Thanks.
Super. Okay. Matt, is there anything else that we didn't cover, Kim, that you guys needed covered on that?
I'm thinking that it would also be helpful to have these documents posted on the commission webpage so that when we communicate, we can refer people to links to those.
Mm-hmm.
If it's okay with the commissioners, I can send out draft minutes from today's meeting along with the attachments to the blast list. And then we can include all of them on the website.
Yeah, and we can include all those, yeah, for sure on the website and maybe the video from this meeting as well too.
Is that okay to send draft minutes out is that okay for the commissioners to send draft minutes out prior to approval? I'll note them as draft.
Yeah, I think they're still public records. So Jack, Mark, do you have any objections to that?
No, they're definitely public records.
Yeah.
They are public records, but
yeah,
I just wanted to ask because it's different than we usually do.
That sounds good. Okay, anything else on the SAP or the PIP?
I guess I have a question as far as, we have some direction here about who the written comments should go to and who the main points of contact should be for the SAP review meeting. Is everybody okay with who we've put in there? We sort of were just guessing, so it's mainly me and Frank.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I think that's fine. Speaking for
Mhm.
myself.
Yeah, that sounds good. Mark, is that all right with you?
Yes.
Super. And Frank, I'm assuming that's okay with you as well?
Yep,
Thank you.
absolutely. Whatever the commissioners
Thank
want.
you. Awesome. Okay, anything else on the SAP or the PIP? So the next item on the agenda is the QAP. We did talk a little bit about that before we talked about the PIP and the SAP. I like these acronyms. So I think, is there anything else really to say about that, Kim? Or are we just going to kind of, because it's a low risk that EPA won't approve, we'll just kind of go ahead with implementation and then get the QAP approved as soon as possible through the regular process?
Yeah, the way the work plan's written right now, that moving forward was contingent on EPA approving of the QAP. And we talked it over, Jeff and Matt and I, and we feel like it's such a low risk. Technically, you don't need EPA approval of the QAP to do this work. It's only when projects are funded by EPA, but it would be helpful to have their endorsement of it, because that means that the data is being collected in a way that it's defensible and it'll hold up under scrutiny. So we'd like to have that, but we don't feel like we need that critically on the timeline to move forward with sampling. So we just wanted to make sure that we're transparent about that with the commission and that everybody was comfortable with that.
Jack, Mark, any objections to that?
I'm fine with it.
No.
Okay, yep, that sounds good. Good to go. Okay, so I'm just aware of the time right now. We did start a little bit late, so I propose we postpone talking about the water quality fact sheet until our next meeting. I'm not even sure that I emailed that out to you guys. Did I email that to you, Jack and Mark?
I saw something, yeah.
I sent
Okay.
it last night, Chair.
Okay, so so that was the beginnings of the idea of having an educational leaflet that we started talking about many months ago, and Kim had kindly drafted this for us under her previous scope of work. So we should talk about this at some point, but would you agree? Is it okay to postpone it?
I was gonna say, I think we should move to adjourn fairly soon. 'Cause we are
Yeah.
going along.
All right.
No
Anything on the
problem
hydro?
postponing at my end.
Okay. Anything on the hydro dredge that needs to be talked about today?
I don't have anything, I'm afraid.
No? Okay, so we'll move that to our next agenda. Vacant seats on the Brockton Advisory Board. So I will reach out to the mayor's office again and see if we can get those filled. Other than that, so I will update everyone on how far I can take that at our next meeting. Outreach to political candidates. So Brockton is in the middle of an election season. The preliminary is in September, the general election in November. There is an opportunity to get water as part of the conversations that will happen. We should know probably this week on who the actual candidates are. Signatures were submitted last week. What has been done in the past with Jones River Watershed Association was sort of a tour of the water system and informal discussion about it, as well as the issues that it's facing. We could, as a commission, reach out to the political candidates here in Brockton and invite them to do that. I did kind of check in with Pine to see if she'd be willing to do that, and she said she would be. So we could, use this as an opportunity to try and get some conversation around water in Brockton, if we so choose. So what did you guys think about that, Mark and Jack?
I like the idea of it. I'm just always concerned that most people in Brockton don't think water is a problem. And it might be difficult to get a candidate to take it on when it's not a perceived issue, because it's an endless flow that is never impeded by anything. So, as good of an idea it is, I think it might be a tough sell for a candidate that might be running on issues that more front and center to their constituents.
Yeah, I think it's hard to, so in the past, water has come up, particularly in the context of the purchase of the Aquaria desalinization plant. So that sometimes does end up being a hot topic. There hasn't really been too much said on that. Like I said, papers were just submitted last week, so I think things are really going to start revealing themselves over the next month or so. There are a couple of debates happening in the city with a couple of organizations. So just as a resident, I've reached out to those organizations, some of which I'm a member of, to suggest that questions include water or Brockton's environment, climate resiliency, anything like that, that might bring water into the conversation. So we could give it a shot, see if there's any biters. Otherwise, we can just not even try and maybe try and do more of that once we have results from the water quality thing project.
And just for clarification, are you talking about city councilors as well as the mayor, or just at the mayor's level for this?
No, city councilors as well.
Okay.
Yeah. Jack, any thoughts?
I think it's a lot of that. We're making a lot of effort anyways. I think that might be a bridge too far to be getting too involved in that now.
Sorry, a bridge too. I didn't hear you.
Bridge too far.
Yeah.
Yeah, we.
So maybe think about it for next season.
That effort would largely fall on you, and I think you have plenty of commitments right now.
Okay.
Fair enough.
Yeah. All right. So let's book in that.
Joanne, when you run for
Yes.
mayor, I think we'll be in good shape with that. But
yeah.
Until then,
you're going to be holding your breath for a long time, Mark. Cool. All right. So we're on to other business. So the one thing that did come up is that the Monpont Resource Management Plan draft has been released. There's a public meeting happening on the 3rd, and written comments are open until, I believe it's August 20-something, 23 or 24, I think. That information is on the Brockton City website. I think that as a commission, we should definitely reply to that. So, Pine, do you know what date the comments are actually due? I'm just trying to see if I can pull up the email.
Let me look while you're talking. Let me try and find it.
Okay. So we can either do what we've done before. I can work on a response based on kind of the response that we had sent previously, and we can just send that in between now and our next meeting. Or if we have time, we can actually talk about it at our next meeting.
So is that so that meeting itself is a live meeting at 7 p.m. on the 3rd?
Yes, and I'm going to be going to that with my multiple hats on.
And I will be attending as well.
Great. So maybe what we can do, I'm just trying to see, do you need to register to make comments? No, you don't. So maybe what we could do is, because I like to keep my different hats separate. Maybe Mark, you can speak on behalf of the commission, and I can speak on just being a resident.
Okay, Jack, are you able to or planning to attend it?
I will be away that day, so I will.
Okay. Okay, yeah, that's fine.
Oh no, it's a virtual public meeting.
Oh, it is?
It is
Okay.
a virtual public meeting. Yep. Yeah, on Microsoft Teams. Okay, so we'll do that, and then the comments are due August 23rd, so the day before our next meeting is scheduled. Do you guys feel like we could just delegate this to me based on the draft, basically the letter we had sent before?
I so moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor? Joanne, aye.
Jack, aye.
Aye.
And Mark? Okay. All right, so we'll do a response to that. Okay, so I think we're good. We talked about our meetings. So the public meeting will be on the evening of August 9. Our next commission meeting will be on August 24th at noon. Both of those will be virtual. Is there anything else that anybody wanted to discuss or bring up in the couple minutes that we've got left?
Chair, if I could,
Yep.
I just wanted to ask, do you want me to post in the 9th in case you want to give a comment as commissioners? That's easy to do. We'll just post for the commissioners to attend the meeting in case there's a quorum.
Oh, I see what you mean. Yeah, maybe we should do that just in case both Mark and I are going to be joining.
Oh,
Thank you for,
so not, I wasn't talking about the Monpont. I was talking about your
Oh.
public on August 10th, on August 9th.
yeah, I think we should post it anyway.
Okay, great,
Yeah, because that way we can get clerks to put it up and everything like that. So let's just do it like a regular meeting.
great. Okay, will do.
Super. Now, do you have Zoom that we can use, Frank, or should I send you a Zoom link?
I don't
the
have
webinar.
one that well, we have a Zoom.
But not the webinar.
I just don't have the breakout attendee function like you do.
Okay. Okay, so I'll set it up and I'll send you the link.
Okay, thank you.
Super. Al, I know Al is on the call. Thank you for joining us from Senator Brady's office. Do you have anything, Al, for us?
No, I don't. I just want to apologize for being late. There was a problem with the link, but I made it eventually, and it was a very good meeting. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Al, for joining us. All right. Anybody else got anything? Or Pine?
I just wanted to point out that Brockton has been using Aquaria lately.
Great.
According to the flow sheets, so you might be wanting to know that.
I wonder who is making that call these days with Larry gone.
I asked and directly, and I wasn't able to elicit a response. But for instance, on the 24th or the 18th, I should say, of July, 2 million from there, and the next day almost 2 million.
2 million.
Yeah.
Wow, that's usually they never take more than 1 million.
Yeah, and the 1st and 2nd of July, they took 2 million each day, and then it dropped down to 1 million. So I don't know what I asked, and I couldn't get an answer from Brian.
Okay.
So I don't know exactly what the situation is, but when I've been contacting folks, I've been contacting Patrick Hill. I have not gotten any replies to any emails, but I think informally, I don't know if it's formal. I think he's sort of acting as the temporary DPW commissioner. I do also know that Larry Rowley is actually still a consultant for the city and still involved in some capacity. So hopefully that all kind of works itself out and we'll have some more clarity in the next couple months. All right, do I have a motion to, Frank?
I'm sorry, just one other thing that I just going through the agenda that you missed with the optional costs. We'll carry that onto the agenda in August.
Okay, is that okay, Jeff and Matt? Yeah, okay, awesome. Thank you, Frank, for picking that up. All right, do I have a motion to adjourn?
So move.
Second.
All in favor, Joanne, aye.
Jack, aye.
Mark, aye.
All right, thank you very much, everybody. See you in a couple weeks.
Thanks,
Thanks.
everybody.
Thank you.
everybody.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.